Thank you. So I actually have the easy role here today. I just have to ask the questions, and happy to share the stage with three people which have deep expertise on the VC side. For today's panel, I thought to structure it maybe in 3 rounds. First, talk about what is the opportunity that you guys see in the Web3 investment ecosystem, the challenges and the way ahead, and then hopefully end on a positive note. And if we have further time, we can maybe invite some people from the floor to pose questions. Starting with the opportunity, my question would be, first, how do you define Web 3.0 from your perspective? What are some of the social benefits that you believe we can deliver upon? And what kind of projects are you most excited in, also from your fund perspective? Maybe give us maybe some indication of what you are looking and investing for. Maybe I'll start with Cecile, ladies first.
Yeah, okay, it's working. So hi everyone, maybe I'll just say a few words about the fund I'm working in. So it's a German fund, Earlybird VC, and we are looking at Web3 for a few years now, can invest in tokens and in equity, primarily equity for now. So it's kind of also leading our investment strategy and the way we see VC in the Web3 ecosystem. So yeah, like what we define in Web3 and what's different from Web2 for us, like the way we see it is that it's like a technology as all the other technologies, like obviously different, but we've been doing this VC job for 25 years, and we believe that it's kind of the same accompanying that we bring to all kind of technologies, and usually kind of position ourselves as complementary to really crypto native funds because we don't have the same value added. Yeah, looking at what opportunities we're looking at, it's quite large, so Web3 as a whole, and like looking at different stuff. Some things obviously are like less mature for now, so we would not invest in them. Yeah, looking mainly at like DeFi, gaming as well, infrastructure, quite a lot currently. Looking at like data developer tools in Web3 as well. And I guess coming forward, and especially with what's happening now, it's going to be, yeah, kind of staying on like infra or like DeFi, more major sectors in Web3.
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Darius. I'm a partner of a fund called Maven 11. So we are a Dutch VC. We started to invest into crypto in 2016. We now have 2 funds. We're a team of 16 folks, and we're primarily focused on token investments and infrastructure. So when I need to define like what is like Web3, I usually start from like what was Web 1, right? And Web 1 was technically a web which was read-only web, right? You couldn't interact with the web, you couldn't build stuff, and so on and so forth, right? And then we had Web 2, and the Web 2 we saw the emergence of platforms like AWS, Facebook, Google, and so on, right? So Web 3 will be the internet that not these corporations gonna own, right? But it's gonna be the internet that users gonna own, right? And sometimes people define it as a semantic web. So for us, I think Web 3 is something that will be user-centric and will be able to own the internet as it is, as it will be. And when it comes to investments, we believe that for Web3 to actually take off, we first need to rebuild the actual infrastructure that web is built on, right? Which means that you cannot build a decentralized internet on AWS, right? When a state actor can turn the internet off, right? You need decentralized cloud computing platforms. You need decentralized storage. You need decentralized IPFS and so on. All these things, right, needs to take place first for us to actually see what Web3 will be capable of and where the future gonna go. So as a fund, we're mostly focused on infrastructure and decentralized networks. So.
Hello everyone, my name is Jonas. I'm a principal at Commerzventures. We're a German fund. We're a Fintech specialist fund, and we've been investing in financial services since 2014. Just out of curiosity, can we please get a show of hands, since we're in Brussels, if there's anybody from the European institutions here? I'd just be interested if if they're interested in these sort of events or if they're not. So members of parliament, bureaucrats, nobody? That's sad. All right. Anyway, so
relay the messages.
yeah, it's not too far even. I mean, they could walk here. But generally speaking, so we've been investing in financial services since 2014, and Web3 is really the first time that we see a complete revamp of the financial system and of the rails that we're using to build financial services, right? It's everything we've seen has been sort of an iteration of Web2 over the last years, and it's been recombination of this technology that has been existent for quite a while. But with Web3, we have the opportunity to really build something entirely new and make it much leaner than it was before and make it much cheaper and more accessible to people. That's why it's super exciting for us to be involved. And in terms of my own sort of interest currently, we invest throughout Europe, the US, Israel, and Africa. And if you look towards Africa, it's where I currently spend a lot of time. You see really the positive impact that crypto can have on people's lives, right? We're building, you know, PFPs here, but what they're building is really an opportunity to send money to somebody that doesn't cost them, you know, an arm, you know, or a leg. Or you could buy, you could really see how we have lots of companies now building the next iteration of neobanks, but they're not building it on Web2 technology. It's really being built on stablecoin rails now, and they offer people opportunity to get access to savings, right, and fractional investments and payment schemes and everything, and make everything much more inclusive. And if we need some inspiration in these days, it's really, I think, you have to look to these sort of use cases and see that crypto actually has a really, really positive impact on a society.
So I think we can all agree there is a clear opportunity. But obviously, there are also still challenges ahead. From your perspective, I would be keen to understand what you think are the biggest challenges. Are they on the educational side? Do we still need to educate people about the power of public blockchains? Darius, you mentioned already issues on the infrastructure side, technology side, possibly also regulation. Keen to understand from your perspective and background what you think are the main obstacles and what we have to do to kind of overcome them.
Yeah, just coming back on like also the opportunity and positive aspects of Web3. It's indeed more inclusive and like kind of eliminate borders for like kind of places in the world that are less included in like the financial system. But it's also like empowering really the user from the beginning and has like a really social benefit from here, really giving back the power. Related to the challenges that I would say indeed, like there's something related to education. For now, it's really, and like we can see that there are like more and more events such as this process blockchain week happening, and more people like interested. But for now, it's still kind of proactive from our side, really like going to events, reading articles, etc. And there are like some schools developing like blockchain programs, but you can see that it's still not there. So that would be like one challenge, education. Obviously, like regulatory challenges as well. Really like a lot of discussions happening here. I guess like regulation is like quite constraining still like on the overall development of the ecosystem. And I would say as a whole, so like accessibility of Web3, which is not really like for now user-centric or like easily accessible to the mainstream user. So that's also, I guess, like one challenge that Web3 is going to have to tackle in the coming months and years.
Yeah, I want to come back a little bit to what Jonas said about, you know, emerging markets, right? So I think that Web3 is taking a different shape in different continents and countries, like Bitcoin did for many years, right? So for us, Web3 is something like this new shiny object, right, for people to talk about and invest. While in emerging markets, Web3 is going through the leaps, right, from like Web2 directly to Web3, right? But what I think what is needed, I mean, like, how many people left Facebook after all the data leak events, right? I think very few did, right? So I don't want to be a cynic, but I think like a big swan, like a big black swan effect is needed for, you know, for people to wake up and realize what is the potential of Web3 and what is the importance of Web3, right? And obviously for that we need to have a very strong pipeline of education, events, and so on and so forth. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure we need a black swan event, to be honest. It would certainly help, but I think when we speak about the retail adoption of it, I think what you said, Cecile, is really true. We need to make it accessible. We have to abstract the complexity away. I think most people here, they know what different governance tokens are and, you know, like wrapped Bitcoin, wrapped Ether and such. But my parents don't know about that, and I'm not sure they want to know about it, right? They just want to use a product that's really handy to use and is easier to use and more accessible than the other products on the market. So for retail adoption, mainstream adoption, this is where we need to go. Abstract away the complexity that we see. Stop talking about the technology, really. Just build a product that is easily understood and designed in a way that it attracts users. I think crypto gaming is the gateway drug currently that gets people involved. That's super good that that's happening, and then these people get to use crypto for the first time without necessarily seeking out a crypto experience. This is where I think this is where we need to go. And in terms of institutional adoption of the space, there's a whole different challenge ahead, right? When it's talking about regulation, talking about identity, talking about building even infrastructure that is built for institutions to begin with and not for retail adoption. There's a lot to build, and that's also why it's such an interesting space to be involved in, because we're now speaking and we're seeing these things being built, right? I mean, I missed out on most of I was too young, I missed out on most of the Web 2 development, right? I came into it when it was already really blossoming. But now we have the opportunity to work with these projects that, you know, enable institutions to get involved, and that I think I find really exciting.
You make an interesting point, like you say we should stop talking about the technology, and often then you also hear people talk about Web 2.0, it's like a merging of fintech and crypto, and I know we just talked about it before entering this room, so maybe you wanted to kind of get your reflection on that and then also open it up to Darius and Cecile, how you see the Web 2.5 concept maturing.
So what's
the interplay between fintech and crypto? Yeah. How you think incumbents can adopt crypto technologies, and how you see the landscape evolving in time?
Incumbent institutions, you mean? Right. Okay. Well, the first iteration of crypto obviously was built by retail for retail, right? Every product was built with a retail sort of mindset. And that's great. I think it's the first asset class that ever came to market that was initially built for and by retail users. But for example, we invested in Curve, which was a crypto custody technology provider that was then acquired by PayPal. And they came out with really the institutional mindset for the base layer, right? The wallets. The wallets were not accessible for institutions, and you need to build a different product for institutions to make it accessible. That's exactly the 2.5 sort of intersection of these two spaces. We need to think of Aave, right? When they built the ARC product, they have to change how they operate the Aave platform, because institutions just cannot be active on it. They need to build specific technology for these institutions to come in. There's plenty of other examples, like an Elwood that we recently invested in, that gives institutions the access to liquidity pools and enables them to become active traders on their own, but also offer it as a client, like a say Revolut or N26 would use Elwood then to offer crypto to their users through Elwood, right? And these are products that are built explicitly for institutional adoption. And that's also, I think, one of the most interesting areas for us, because we're equity investors at the core, right? We can invest in tokens, but we're not Maven 11. We're not really natives in that space. So this area is really, it goes straight to what we know and what we understand and where we can add value, and where there's a lot happening, frankly.
Maybe from like more Maven 11 perspective, and as we're like token first fund, I think the Web 2.5 or like DeFi 2.5, how we think about it is that it's something that people try to replicate on blockchain that was already done in traditional finance, right? And I think this is the bridge where a lot of institutions might come into the space, but what we're really looking for, and I think, you know, the infrastructure that is being built right now, the DeFi primitives that are being built right now, going to lay the foundation for really new, novel, innovative products to be built, right? Like Uniswap, I think, opened, you know, a huge opportunities for people to innovate and build new stuff in DeFi, right? So I think when you look through the investment into crypto, into blockchain, into tokens, what we're looking for is like very novel solutions and very novel protocols being built in the next like decade, right? Which doesn't try to replicate what was built in traditional finance, but are actually using the tools, right, in the decentralized way to build completely novels.
Yeah, just going back on the fact of like kind of pushing or like helping institutionals to get into crypto and DeFi. I think there are like some companies already existing that would be like some kind of one-stop shop to help institutionals get into crypto and DeFi. So this could be it. I think Web 2.5 is indeed like a bridge between Web 2 and Web 3, obviously, and then I guess it's a bridge that needs to happen so that like there's a real adoption, mainstream adoption of Web 3, and this kind of goes through centralized entities that are like kind of having an activity in Web 3, and this could be like some kind of products or like you know, for instance, like quite recently I was looking at like some kind of Brex or like Swile spend management product for like Web 3. And you could think of like many applications that are in itself like products that are not decentralized, but that are still like kind of used in Web 3. And this I think is kind of needed to do really like the transition between Web 2 and Web 3. And that's like also one challenges. We were talking earlier on challenges. I think like this transition between the two is an actual challenge in the coming years.
And the three of you, you also work and invest in different regions. Looking forward, and if the European institutions would have been represented here, what would you recommend as the right way to have a public-private partnership? From looking at other centers in the world, what do you think is needed in terms of building the right Web3 ecosystem? Maybe
I have a very good quote that's stuck in my head when it comes to regulations, is that when the big wave is coming, right, you should not build a wall against it, right? You should buy a surfboard and learn how to surf the wave, right? So I think the biggest risk by far in you know, whether it is United States or Asia or Europe is over-regulation, right? Because over-regulation kills developers' appetite, right? And it kills innovation itself, right? So I'm usually kind of like trying to think and seek for ways when in conversation with especially regulators, like how can you actually build that surfboard, right? And how can you be lean on regulation at the same time not allowing, you know, situations maybe as like UST to happen, or maybe I think it was impossible to stop that, but you know, maybe how can you regulate companies like Celsius more, right? But again, I think that blockchain and crypto space is so young still, and you just can't over-regulate it, right? You need to see which direction it takes, right? Which direction it takes in DeFi, which direction it takes in Web3 and NFTs, so yeah.
Adding on that, I think what I would really like to see is European institutions trying to truly understand what's going on, right? It sometimes doesn't feel like they're doing that. I mean, if we look at MiCA and the other regulations that they put forth, I think there was a lot of lobbying going into that from people such as yourself to help them understand what they're even regulating, right? When it came to let's ban proof of work and Bitcoin for its environmental reasons, it's just nonsense. And I would really like if they were here listening to us, mingling with the people in the space, the operators, trying to understand what's going on, and then finding that mindset and using it to, okay, how can we put this, put guardrails on it so the excesses doesn't happen, and there's no straight out scams happening everywhere, but find a way to make it work, right?
Like also like good example what happened in the United States now, right? So they are about, I think, to pass a regulation that every developer who has a multisig, which effectively is, you know, we're launching protocols and you're governing the protocol, would eventually be called an exchange, right? And it would be regulated as an exchange. So they're just going to force developers, right, to move to, you know, these offshore countries and live in offshore countries, you know, for the time while they're building the protocol, which I think is a very, you know, a very bad path that United States at least are taking. So,
Yeah, kind of keeping that topic of regulation and like how also like we investors see it. I guess it's kind of twofold because like obviously this would kind of reassure also like our LPs because like we're like asset managers, right? We're still managing the money of some other people and mainly like institutionals. And this would reassure them, and I think like there would be like way more money also flowing like in the market and kind of making it more dynamic. But if indeed, if like we are too constraining and like if regulation is, then like talent companies are gonna flee, and it's super strategic for us. And I think it's something that like governments understood as well, and some maybe more than others. But for instance, I'm based in France, and France like is quite active as an ecosystem currently, and I think the government like really understood that and is really trying to make it faster. So yeah, it's kind of like a twofold and quite interesting to see like how it will go in the past. But definitely, indeed, like what happened with Celsius wouldn't have happened if like I think some of the decisions that have been made is to like kind of keep an amount of treasury as kind of like the MiFID and the banks. So yeah, like it's kind of balanced.
I think from my perspective, as I live and breathe regulation, I think you had the right word there. It's like about safeguards, guardrails for the industry. I think it's no coincidence that the Lummis bill in the US is called Responsible Innovation Act, and I think that's something we should promote. Yes, there's indeed need for continuous education. I don't think Europe will ban proof of work, though there are still certain forces that call for it. So from our side, it's about sustainable disclosure requirements, and actually there, crypto industry, the miners, if you give them the incentives to go for renewables, it's actually a force for good. But I also see that while people want to be tough on crypto regulation these days, but in this climate, that's just the politics of it. There's still a big group of people who at the same time are very open, positive about the underlying technology. Countries like France want to be a hub for Web 3.0 companies, so I always think you need to marry those two and need to know what you regulate. And I always say you can't regulate against volatility. So that's just inherent to this nascent industry. Just checking on time if we five more minutes. So maybe as I said, I'd like to end on a positive note, and you guys invest in the future. People always say you build in the bear, and I think that's a message that will resonate across all panels today. But what projects are you most excited about over the next 1-2 years, and what you're investing in, and what you think will be fundamentally different 1 or 2 years from now? Maybe start with Jonas first.
Okay, so what I'm most excited about is really crypto in Africa, the intersection of both. As I said before, you see projects being built that just have a real positive impact. And I've spoken to a number of companies, and they started out, giving access to Bitcoin, and quickly realized that people weren't interested in buying or trading Bitcoin. They just send it to somebody else, and they off-ramped immediately, right? So they're like, oh wow, these people actually use it for international remittances. When you get into it, why they do that, especially in Africa, and you learn about all these problems that they have. Like if you want to send money abroad, and you go to a bank in, let's say, Nigeria, they'll often tell you, we don't have US dollars, come back in 2 weeks, right? And this, I mean, it's a problem for retail, but it's also a problem for institutions and merchants because they just cannot trade, and if we can build these stablecoin rails for them and make it work for them, we're just eliminating a lot of these problems and help, you know, that region to grow and for these people to be much more included in the global financial markets. And I think that's ultra positive. Apart from that, what we're excited about is that institutional adoption of crypto has happened, right? It's ongoing, it's there. Literally everybody has a strategy now and is talking about it. But the next frontier is sort of institutional adoption of DeFi. And that's going to take a while, and there's a lot of projects trying to facilitate that. I think we're going to go into the bear market, yes, but as investors, I mean, if we're in it for the price of Bitcoin, then we're in the wrong position here, right? We're in it for the technology and the projects that we see. So we're open for business, really open for business. And yeah, as you said, we're building in bear markets. So yeah, I don't even look at the price if I look, you know, at the space. So we're open for business.
Yeah, I think like in it for the technology going to become a big meme in the next 24 months. Everyone of us going to be there in for the technology. So, but I must agree, you know, like the direct impact of crypto and blockchain is one of the most exciting use cases in emerging markets. But as the topic is today, like Web3 and what I touched briefly maybe in the opening question is that I think in the next 2 years, we're finally going to have an opportunity to build decentralized web. What I mean by that is that we're going to have all the network layers, right, that are below blockchain decentralized. We're going to have, you know, cloud computing decentralized. We're going to have hosting companies decentralized, right? We're going to have decentralized storage solutions. So, and with privacy coming with the ZKs and other technologies, we will be able to actually live in a web that is owned and hosted by us, right? So I think this is the most exciting evolution of where blockchain technologies and networks are going. And I think, as I said, in a couple of years, we'll be able to do that. So.
Yes, so just talking about this bear market, indeed, I guess, kind of the same in every crisis, and it's the same, and it was the same in Web2 as well. And you can see that like many success stories have actually been built also like in the former crisis. So I guess this is pretty sane. It's also like eliminating a lot of opportunities or like companies that were like maybe a bit less relevant or a bit less really like kind of well built. I think like currently what's more exciting and it's kind of linked to Web3, which is in itself quite disruptive as an innovation. It's like all the incremental ones that are like building on top of it and really like staying on infra. There's like a lot of new ideas, like new kind of tokens that are being developed, like for instance, like cell-bound tokens, or like indeed like all these layer 2s, rollups, ZK that like started emerge and that are going to mature as well in the coming months and years. Yeah, many different new ideas, like Jack Dorsey even like talked about like the Web 5. So it's like you can see that like it's being quite fast. But overall, what I think is super exciting compared to Web 2 is that like it's really like exponentially fast, and that like you really need to stay like on top of things, and like it's so active and inclusive that yeah, it's quite exciting.
I think we probably need another panel to talk about Web 5, but what I retained from you guys is that we're in it for the technology. There are already the use cases, as you mentioned, like institutional adoption is already there, a lot of movement on the technology infrastructure side, and in 1-2 years time we will be further ahead and hopefully have exited this bear market. But this now leaves me to thank you very much for your contributions. I hope everyone found it as interesting as I did, and hope we can continue this conversation at future events. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.